Hey Pooh Butts, what I'd like to talk to you about today is the trickster archetype with regards to spiritual teachers, particularly my own. So, sometimes I wake up early in the morning, not because I'm disciplined particularly, but because, near as I can tell, upstairs neighbors are musicians, specifically drummers, and they are only able to practice a very specific form of drumming, which is their feet on the floor. They practice these drum solos around about 5 or 6 o'clock every morning. The result of all this is that I listen to audiobooks sometimes, and I lay there on my bed and I listen to audiobooks such as the great Lewis Hyde's Trickster Makes the World. You may or may not know Lewis Hyde is the author of a book called The Gift, which is a really important book for Generation X artists, writers like Zadie Smith and David Foster Wallace, who both blurbed the book. Michael Chabon as well did an introduction for Trickster Makes the World. So Lewis Hyde is a really interesting, out-of-the-box, high IQ thinker that in this book, Trickster Makes the World, unpacks the archetype of the trickster, or the clown, or the coyote spirit, the sacred fool. Figures like Loki, or Hermes, or perhaps the Joker from Batman, or the Riddler from Batman. The trickster is a playful, mischievous spirit whose hijinks border on evil as he, she, they disrupt the social order by throwing out the norms, doing naughty, illegal, dangerous, or worse things for oftentimes selfish reasons, but the end results often being that they renew the world around them and they inspire and instigate change and a rebirth in a society that's become stale and dysfunctional and sort of attached to its rules. So this is the trickster archetype as seriously explored in this somewhat digressive, uneven, but ultimately profoundly interesting book by the great Lewis Hyde. Now, I was laying there in my bed as the drum solo was going on upstairs, and I came to this chapter where Lewis Hyde was talking in a way that reminded me of our current president, okay? And I'm actually just gonna read to you this chapter. He says, the shamelessness of the trickster archetype often gets people wondering or leads people to ask if the trickster isn't really a psychopath. Certainly there are parallels. Psychopaths lie, cheat, and steal. They are given to obscenity, and, as one psychologist puts it, they exhibit a, quote, confusion of amorous and excretory functions, unquote. They're not just antisocial, they're foolishly so. They will commit thefts, forgery, adultery, fraud, and other deeds for astonishingly small stakes and under much greater risks of being discovered than will the ordinary scoundrel. While they are often smart, they have a sort of rudderless intelligence, responding to situations as they arise, but unable to formulate any coherent, sustainable, long-term plan. They are, and okay, at this point, as I was lying in bed, I was in a liminal state, which is the state of the trickster. They move through liminal zones and operate in a sneaky way under the covers, so to speak. And that was the cover, under the covers, that was the situation that I was in. And I'm listening to it, I'm like, you got to wake up, grab your phone, auto-dictate a note to yourself, because this is Donald Trump. This is Donald Trump. Trickster or psychopath? What's the difference between the two? Lewis Hyde is asking that question here. And he says, they are masters of the empty gesture, and they have a glib facility with language, stripping words of the glue that normally connects them to feeling and morality. Finally, they lack both remorse and shame for the harm and hurt that trail behind them. One way or another, almost everything that can be said about psychopaths can also be said about tricksters. So again, I am not so interested in politics on this channel. I am interested in a spiritual but not woo-woo approach to life. And what I found so interesting as I was lying in bed listening to the drummers in my liminal state and absorbing what Lewis Hyde was saying about the crossover between the trickster archetype and the psychopath, I found myself thinking, Lewis Hyde wrote this book in 1998, and yet everything that he is saying is 100% pertinent to this particular moment now in history. This trickster slash psychopath archetype is manifesting a political reality right now in this moment. And it reminded me again of the importance of deep and true spiritual thought, like the kind I think that Carl Jung did that led to this notion of the archetypes that ultimately results in a book like the one Lewis Hyde wrote. So it was a reminder to me that there are deep and timeless spiritual truths that keep regenerating generation after generation after generation. And there is a way to think about things outside of the current political moment, which can oftentimes seem like a 5-alarm fire that is totally overwhelming. And even if it is that, it doesn't help you to be consumed internally by the conflagration of the present political moment, okay? You need to be cool and calm. You need to be Satori Joe and Kensho Kathy, all right? So, what was my point again? After I came up with that flourish of ridiculous language that I am clearly so proud of, excuse me. Okay, so my point was, then I started to fall asleep, and Lewis Hyde drifted away, and the drumming abated, and I remembered my teacher, Joshu Sasaki Roshi, and I remembered a specific incident and a series of events during one training season that really led me to ask the question, is this guy who ordained me and is leading me on my spiritual path at this monastery a trickster, a coyote spirit, or a psychopath? Okay, so to begin with, the stories wherein my teacher behaves in a way that blurs the line between trickster and psychopath are legion. Every monk, priest, nun, student, and otherwise had one about this guy. When I went to Japan, his great-great-grandson told me stories that he had heard about Roshi that blurred the line between trickster and psychopath. Can't think of another way to put it. This is just one of them that I'm about to tell you. So, I was put in the role as head monk, and a peer that I had worked with early in my career at the monastery, a kind of mentor who I admired and appreciated early on, returned to the monastery with his new wife. And Roshi appointed him in a sort of honorary role that was kind of like a temporary abbot. It was very unclear what this monk's role was. That role was unclear, but what became clear over the course of a few weeks at the beginning of this very intense winter training season was that this monk and his wife were going to do what they wanted at the monastery, get rid of whom they disliked at the monastery, and whenever they felt like it, walk into the kitchen with large duffel bags and dump all the groceries we had just bought into the duffel bag, and then repair to their nice house at the edge of the monastic complex. It's the wrong word for it. At the edge of our monastery, we had purchased this house for a like vice abbot to live in, and they lived there, eating our food and draining the monastery's resources, while also waging a war against the students that they found not up to snuff. And this was just about everyone. There was a strange young man named Frank from the Netherlands, and he wore these vinyl pants day after day after day, all winter long, morning, noon, and night, and they in bed and out of bed. He probably wore them into the shower, such that they became fruit leather pants. That's what we called them, fruit leather pants. They hated this guy. They were trying to kick him out. And it was very clear to me that although I was the head monk, this dude was senior to me, and I was going to have to kind of sort of make sure that in taking care of my responsibilities, I did not encroach on his comfort level. It was kind of like I was preparing the monastery for him to eventually take over. It was a horrible time. And part of this whole episode was, we were not a rich monastery. We never had money. And when I arrived there, there had been a few big donations. Now, we had 26 buildings, 20 buildings, old Boy Scout buildings from the 1940s that were falling apart, right? And it took a lot of money to keep this place maintained. And we were always at the bottom of our finances. And somebody donated some money, and we had like maybe $200K total. I can't believe I feel like I just flashed you my genitalia. It's so private to talk about money. Anyways, we had like $200K. And as the head monk, I was the stingiest mofo on the planet. I protected that money. To me, money has always meant freedom. And it was a gift that we had money so that we could continue to do this really important practice. So money was freedom for all of us to offer our lives to this practice with this teacher. And I protected that money. Well, what happened was this head monk, not this head monk, I was the head monk, this other monk, let's call him Dingo. I wrote some notes here. We'll call them Dingo and Luna. By the way, I like having enemies because it sharpens my fighting spirit, and that helps get me off my ass and into the game sometimes. So enemies can be a good thing, and this dude was an enemy. 4 different people on 4 separate occasions came up to me privately and mentioned one or both of 2 words: narcissist and sociopath. Do with that what you will. So, Dingo approaches my teacher and says, the cabin that we're living in is subpar. We would like to renovate it. Roshi says, okay. Now, that has generally been Roshi's approach so far to this monk's demands. The monk asks to come back, Roshi lets him come back. The monk asks to move in with his wife at a cabin. Roshi says, sure, go ahead. Roshi is saying yes to these things all along, and this is disrupting every aspect of practice. A Zen Buddhist monastery under this particular teacher during a training season is not a place for a family. It's not a safe place for a couple to come and be a couple. That's not how a monastery works. A monastery is a place where you go, you give yourself to this practice alone with your teacher and your peers. I mean, it's like boot camp for the soul. It's not for a couple looking to start their new life and a family together. Why is Roshi agreeing to all this? And he's making my life really difficult because I'm having to negotiate between all these students who are infuriated and scared of Dingo and Luna, right? And I'm sort of like not really communicating this stuff to Roshi, but I know he knows because he's telling me things. And so I know there's a game going on here, and it's a serious game. And I know that if I give energy to my conflicts and my tension with Dingo, Roshi's going to smell that, and he's going to throw fuel on that fire. I know how this guy works. And so I'm going to manifest with as much coolness, calmness, clarity, and compassion as I can in this really difficult situation, because I know how dangerous it is to become like, it's like that sticky fingers archetype. Like you get stuck to something sticky, and then you use your other hand to push yourself off. Oh, now that's stuck. Then you use your head to push, you use your feet, you're stuck, right? That's what would happen when you would manifest a certain energy or attachment around Roshi. So I didn't want to get him all stick-a-fingered between me and Dingo. So it just gets worse and worse. Dingo hires a pathological liar and a lunatic and a coke addict to do repairs on the house. And this pathological lying coke addict winds up creating havoc all over the Zen Center. Like this guy, I'm not going to go into the story about this guy, it's another story. But what winds up happening is tens of thousands of monastic financial resources start going to this project of renovating this monk's house, okay? And like 10,000 more, 10,000 more. And the project is taking a month. And now it's taking 2 months. Now it's taking 3 weeks, 3 months. Now it's taking half a year, right? Money is being drained. Drama is being created. Coke is being snorted by this lunatic. I remember one of our Zen students was a plumber. And he said, that guy's on some kind of drug. Because I'll tell you what, no matter how crazy you are as a contractor, you take care of your tools. And I was watching that guy over there at 3 o'clock in the morning, lights on in the house, throwing his tools around, acting like a crazy person. That's when I knew this guy's gonna have a heart attack pretty soon because he is on drugs, okay? And it was true. Now, things just got worse and more dramatic. Eventually, this is a sidebar, but I actually have been meaning to share this part of the story for a while. Let me see if my phone is recording this. My phone is recording this. I'm just rambling a little bit too much here, but I've been meaning to share this story with you. So, we hired somebody. You know, you start working on one aspect of renovation, and then like suddenly your price has quadrupled, you know? And this monk wanted to put in a steam shower, so it's not just we gotta renovate the whole bathroom. Now it's gotta be like have a steam bath in the shower, you know? Really, dude? Really? Dingo! So we got to re-roof the whole roof now. And we hire a roofer. And there were like 2 or 3 guys. And the leader of the roofing scheme was named Oscar Moreno. And I'm sitting there in the kitchen at the monastery. I'm all alone and I'm putting away some dishes. And somebody knocks on my door and I open the door. It's Oscar Moreno. Oh, hi, Oscar. I'm Gento. That's my monk's name. Hey, Oscar Moreno. Interestingly, I told him this. I said, Oscar, your name is the name of the oldest student of our Zen Center. He's a mathematician from Puerto Rico. He sits in he's a large sort of man who resembles a hobbit, and he has a great frizzy hair, and his robes hang open and he has a large bulbous nose and lots of flesh on his face, and he flatulates all the time. And he makes faces in Zendo as he's flatulating. Flatulation was allowed in the Zendo because flatulation is you can burp, you can flatulate, you can sneeze, but you can't do things that are voluntary, like coughing or rubbing your eye or something. Anyways, so he laughed, Oscar Moreno, when I told him this, and I laughed, and I said, okay, you know, the house that you're going to is over there. Good luck. You know, you got to take the roof off. Dingo and his wife are over there. If you have any trouble, just have them call me. Okay, this is so hard. I'm like actually having traumatic flashbacks to this now. So then about an hour and a half later, I get a call from Dingo, and he says, get over here. I go over there. Oscar Moreno has fallen off the roof. It was like a 4-foot drop from where it was like a 6-foot drop from where he fell off the roof to the porch. And he was laying on the porch and he was writhing and wiggling. And I don't mean disrespect. This is what was my experience of that moment. He was like an animal. He was barking and mewling like an animal. So I don't know whatever happened to him. It was a big deal. The helicopter came up to the top of Mount Baldy. It landed in the street, and they strapped him down into and they carried him into the helicopter, and they flew away. I talked to his wife for a couple years after that. He was really never good again. He would scream, he was violent, they had to do all sorts of things around the house so that he wouldn't hurt himself. That whole project, that renovation project, had bad juju, man. It had bad juju. So, and it about broke me. Then I had to, all these, anyways. And weirdly enough, this house, in classic Sasaki Roshi fashion, okay? Psychopath or trickster, dudes. Like, it wasn't really in anyone's name who lived at the monastery. So Roshi was trying to like half seduce one monk to come and be the abbot, half get him to do it, and half like try and convince him not to do it. I don't know how Roshi does these things. I don't know why he did these things, but he was like, yeah, you can have it, you know. So he put this house in that guy's name, right? And the monk was always telling me, he was long gone from the monastery. And he was always telling me, dude, I want to get my name off that lease. Y'all are crazy. I know how you guys operate. Like, I don't want my name on that lease. If something happens there, I'm responsible. Well, something happened there. Okay, the guy fell off the roof. And when somebody gets hurt on your property, guess what? Like lawsuits start, you know. So it just got worse and worse, this whole situation. And the monk whose name the property was in thought I was lying to him. And I was trying to like be political, and I was trying to deal with Dingo, who wasn't taking responsibility for any of this. It was just like, you're the head abbot, you're the head monk, you deal with all this, right? So you know, there's like insurance companies, and Oscar Moreno's life has changed for the worse, along with the life of his family, and we're close to like $80K sucked out of our precious monastic bank accounts now to, amongst other things, put a steam shower in this monk's bathroom, Dingo's bathroom, in a property that he shouldn't be in the first place, that he doesn't own, that he doesn't belong in, that he's using monastic resources to renovate. Like, and I'm bringing all this energy in my meeting with Roshi one day. And I've had enough. I'm ready to break, baby. I'm ready to break, you know? I'm just like, going crazy, right? And I kneel down, and I know not to touch sticky fingers, like not to go sticky, because he's gonna see that energy, you know. And I had made clear there was like certain things I had to do with Roshi, like ways of surviving this very fierce, possibly psychotic, definitely tricksterian teacher, right? And a lot of that was solely never bring him personal drama, you know? But at one point I said to him, recounting much of what I had just recounted for you in a clear bullet point type way, I said to him, like, Roshi, this is a little bit crazy. And there was silence. And he was absorbing this. And then he came out the other side of this absorption with his insight, and like the light bulb went off above his head. And he said, oh, but sometimes crazy okay. Crazy okay sometimes. Is crazy okay? Sometimes? I don't know. I'm not going to be able to answer that question here today, but I do know, or at least I've had an experience which leads me to believe that, like, sometimes life is really crazy. It just gets crazy. And when it does, it never helped me to cling to conventional notions of good and bad and right and wrong and what should and should not be. Like, sometimes you just gotta shift gears and move with the crazy. That doesn't mean affirming the crazy or contributing to the crazy, but you can't stand still, clenching your fists, grinding your teeth, spewing tears and shouting in a temper tantrum, this is not how it's supposed to be! Even though that was pretty much what I did 24/7 internally at the monastery during that difficult time I just told you about. And I'm here to tell you, it did not help. Was my teacher a trickster or a psychopath or both or neither? Ultimately, I had to think about him more as a phenomenon and almost not anthropomorphize his behavior. And in that way, I kept my attention where it belonged, which was on my own practice, my own path as a monk. It was on myself. It wasn't on my teacher and his behavior and an interpretation of his behavior. And that's one of the ways I was able to keep my head at the monastery, was to think about him as a phenomenon, not as a person. And in that way, I didn't judge good or bad. And I think this is a helpful way to move through difficult, tricky, strange times, like the times that we are in right now. I mean, we are in topsy-turvy times. Up is down and down is up. Right is left and left is right. The conservatives are destroying/disrupting, and the liberals are conserving/clinging. I don't know what's happening anymore, people. These are genuinely crazy times. Getting back to that Lewis Hyde book and the paragraph that I was reading you before, just want to close here with some of Lewis's thoughts. He says, finally, for all his failings and all the grief he authors, the trickster is also a culture hero, inventor of fish traps, bringer of fire, the one who turned his own destroyed intestines into foodstuffs for the new people. He is connected to a class of actions no psychopath ever performed. Here it's worth recalling Paul Radin's classic insight. Trickster is at one and the same time creator and destroyer, giver and negator, who knows neither good nor evil, yet is responsible for both. And Lewis Hyde goes on to say that when we author the figure as a psychopath and disallow the possibility of the trickster spirit, we are robbing ourselves of an opportunity to take advantage of change and changing times. And when things got real difficult with my own teacher, it was helpful for me at the end of his life, when the scale seemed to, at least in the public eye, be tilting towards psychopath and away from trickster. I was ready for that moment because I had, as I said before, turned the attention away from him and on my own practice, and tried to avoid that sticky fingers approach. And when you look at the phenomenon and not the person, then you can interpret the phenomenon as a trickster phenomenon, and you can learn from it and move with change. If you take the bait and personify the person as a villain, then you're stuck fighting a crazy person, and good luck doing that. Crazy people will make mincemeat of you very quickly. So, in these crazy times, I'm trying to keep an open mind and my own trickster spirit vital and alive, okay? Because these are strange and interesting times. And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you for watching. Thanks for your support for this channel by hitting like and hitting subscribe and all that good stuff. And you can also go to patreon.com/showsonjackhobbner and support this channel there. There's also a link to PayPal in the video description below, where you can make a one-time or a many-time donation. But I offer these videos for free, and I'm so grateful to be able to share this stuff with you and get feedback from you, and to just put out there some kind of energy towards this like weird project we're all taking a part of here on planet Earth, that is both deadly serious and wildly, rambunctiously fun somehow at the exact same time.